Upon receiving the report, William was in his office. He shot to his feet, his face darkening. The call from the camera system manager served as vivid confirmation of his suspicions. "She is trying to erase the evidence," William thought, disappointment and anger surging within him. This action did not extinguish the fire. It poured fuel on it. He immediately called the head of the investigation team, his voice cold.
"Monitor this request closely. Do not allow any data to be altered." Meanwhile, Camilla sat in her private sitting room, holding a tea events like state banquets. Use the reason of ensuring privacy for the royal family members. Do it quietly and naturally. The assistant nodded, though he found the request rather unusual. He quickly contacted the technical department. The head of the camera system, a longtime engineer, frowned upon hearing it. He knew the procedures well. Data from state-level ceremonies was stored for a fixed period and required no special intervention. The sudden inquiry from Camilla's side felt strange. He decided to report it to management immediately. The information reached William before any footage could be tampered with. William decided not to wait any longer. He requested an urgent internal meeting with King Charles, several senior advisors, and Camilla. The small meeting room was brightly lit. This silent confrontation was heading toward a climax, and both sides understood that a serious confrontation could not be avoided.
2 days after the incident, the atmosphere in the palace grew even heavier.
She realized that her attempt to check the camera data had backfired, making William even more certain of her intentions. Within the palace, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense despite the outward calm. William continued gathering evidence quietly, but relentlessly. Camilla, meanwhile, grew more uneasy, waiting for the next development.
Felt cold. William entered carrying a thick folder of documents, his face stern and his eyes radiating unshakable determination. Once everyone was seated, William began, his voice low but sharp.
"We need to clarify what happened at the state banquet." Charlotte was his daughter, the hope of the new generation. Someone deliberately testing her position felt like a direct threat to his family.
He continued meeting privately with the camera supervisor about it.
William gripped the armrest tightly, blood rushing to his face. He sensed the cold calculation in Camilla's actions. This was not the mistake of a busy or forgetful person. It was a deliberate act. The more he watched, the angrier he became.
Each name card. She did not pass by casually. She lingered for quite some time at Charlotte's position before deliberately pulling out the chair and sitting down. There was nothing accidental about view footage from the hallway cameras and the banquet room cameras before the main guests entered. In the darkened room, he sat alone, eyes fixed on the screen. The images were clear. Camilla entered early, paused before the row of chairs, and carefully read, watching. These accounts fit together like puzzle pieces. William sat silently, his hand clenched into a fist on the table. He was not quick to judge, but a father's heart was seething. Charlotte was his daughter, the future of the line. Check added, "Your Highness, everything happened very quickly. We reported it immediately to His Majesty because we did not dare ask her to move herself. Then you and His Majesty arrived almost simultaneously." William let out a heavy sigh, struggling to control his emotions. He stood up and Camilla, sitting in her seat, was not merely a protocol error. It seemed to carry an intent to test boundaries. He recalled the moment Camilla hesitated to stand, the strained smile on her lips. That was not the face of someone who had made an innocent mistake. Another staff member responsible for the final paced a few steps in the cramped room, lost in thought. These small details alone were not enough to condemn anyone, but when pieced together, they formed a clearer picture. Camilla had deliberately observed, inquired, and then sat down. It was not a random accident. He felt a sense of betrayal on some level.
Not want it to become a public scandal, but he would also show no leniency. That night, the light in his study remained on until the early hours. The suspicions had taken root. and William knew the road ahead would not be easy. Did not clarify the matter, similar incidents could continue undermining the foundations of the royal family. William decided he would personally oversee the investigation. Heated ears had not yet been turned to full brightness, creating a half-lit space that allowed her to observe every detail of the fully arranged banquet table clearly. Camilla stopped in front of the central row of chairs. Her eyes slowly scanned the carefully placed name cards. The chair bearing Princess Charlotte's name occupied. Going back to that day before the main guests officially entered the Great Hall, Camilla had quietly arrived at the banquet area a few minutes early. Windsor Castle was still quiet at that time, echoing only with the soft sound of her footsteps on the thick red carpet. The chandelier's ability weighed heavily on his shoulders. He recalled the years of effort to build an image of a happy family, so that Charlotte and her siblings could grow up in a safe environment. Now all of that was at risk of being shaken. Despite his fatigue, everything confidential, William instructed the staff sternly. I do not want rumors spreading. This is an internal royal family matter. In the following days, William spent more time in his office. He appeared less in public, instead holding short meetings with trusted advisors. The deeper he dug, the more pressure he felt. On one hand, he wanted to protect the honor of the royal family. On the other, he could not ignore an action that had touched his own children. The sense of responsibility and technical team. Everyone confirmed again that there had been no orders to change the chart. William took careful notes, comparing times and cross-referencing statements. Though he lacked direct evidence of deeper motives, he was now certain this was no accident. The pieces were gradually forming a disturbing picture. Keep everything out of control. She feared that William, with his resolute nature and fierce family protection, would not stop. She understood that if this story came to light, her reputation would suffer severe damage. Camilla tried to maintain her daily routine. She appeared at some smaller events with a radiant smile, chatting cheerfully with everyone. But inside, she was calculating her next moves. She knew William held many pieces of the puzzle. Her sudden interest in the camera right after the incident only gave him more reason to believe it was not cup, but not drinking. She felt the pressure tightening around her. At first, she had thought it was a small test to assert her position. But now everything was spiraling accidental. As the night fell, Camilla stood by the window, looking out at the pitch-dark gardens. She sighed heavily. The years beside Charles had always involved her efforts to affirm her role. But this time, she had gone too far. The anxiety kept her awake. Crystal chandeliers sparkled brilliantly, reflecting off the intricately arranged tables and chairs. The state banquet table was ready to welcome important international guests, occupied the central place of honor, clearly affirming the grandchildren's important role in the royal family. As the stream of high-ranking guests began entering the reception area, the atmosphere grew increasingly solemn. Murmurs of polite conversation and soft laughter, adorned with fresh imported flowers and ceremonial details, meticulously prepared over many weeks. The entire seating chart had been meticulously approved by King Charles and his advisors days earlier. Every position held its own significance, especially the seat reserved for Princess Charlotte, the symbol of the next generation of heirs. That small chair, every ceremony. The story closed, but left a profound lesson for the entire royal family. It was a tale of the boundaries of power, the responsibility of the matter. Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy each member and William's powerful instinct to protect his family. Its echoes still lingered, reminding everyone that even in a magnificent palace, small challenges could lead to major changes. If you were Prince William, would you quietly investigate to the end to protect Charlotte's role, or would you consider it merely a minor incident and close staff, though his eyes remained hard? I require everyone to keep this matter completely confidential. Do not disclose it to anyone outside this group. He ordered the palace office to quietly review all documents, reports, and images related to the banquet. "I need the truth."
As a member of the royal family, he had always tried to maintain unity. But now, he had to protect his own small family first.
"You all did very well by reporting promptly," William said, his voice warming slightly, to reassure the in the night. The cold wind made him shiver, but not from the chill. It was a deep anxiety for the future. Charlotte was too young to understand these power games, but he was not. As a father, he felt the heavy burden of responsibility. As a prince, he knew that if he... Not rumors, he emphasized. The staff nodded in compliance, each feeling the weight in William's voice. When the meeting ended, William walked back into the dark hallway. He paused by a large window, gazing out at the royal gardens, shrouded to deep disappointment. Camilla sat opposite, initially trying to stay calm, but growing paler with every word. She could not deny the chain of events that had been clearly recorded. When William finished, the meeting room fell into heavy silence. Charles spoke first for data. Each piece he laid out struck like a sharp blade. Charles listened, his face growing darker. He gripped the armrest tightly, his eyes shifting from surprise, inquired about the central position. Next, the clear hallway camera footage. She deliberately read the name cards and sat in Charlotte's chair. Finally, the information about the unusual request from Camilla's assistant regarding camera. "This is not merely a protocol issue, but one of respect for the position of the next generation of heirs." He presented each piece of evidence coldly. First, the detailed statements from staff. Camilla had stood observing the banquet table for a long time, and in turn to her private rooms, Camilla sat alone by the window. She gazed into the darkness outside, her hands clenched tightly. What had begun as a spontaneous moment to assert her status in polite conversation. But inside, she felt uneasy. She knew William would not let this pass easily. Suspicions had begun to arise, and she understood she had just ignited a silent confrontation. That night, when she directly at William's most sensitive point, his love and protective instinct for his children. Throughout the rest of the state banquet, Camilla tried to maintain a calm exterior, smiling at guests, and engaged had now become a heavy burden. She began to worry about the possible consequences. William was resolute, and if he dug deeper, things would no longer be simple. William maintained a calm exterior when meeting other family members. He did not want Charles to worry too soon, but he knew he needed solid evidence before concluding. Each night, he sat alone, a trusted assistant, into her private room. She tried to keep her voice calm, but her eyes revealed clear worry. "I want you to check the data retention period for cameras. During major images from the hallway cameras haunted her. If William viewed that footage, her actions would no longer be a mistake, but clear evidence of deliberate intent. She knew she needed to act quickly, but discreetly, so as not to raise further suspicion. The next morning, Camilla called him, thinking about the future. He was determined to protect his daughter at all costs, even if it meant facing difficult conflicts within the palace. After learning that William was quietly reviewing the entire incident, Camilla began to feel her growing anxiety day by day. She could not sleep peacefully. "I wanted to affirm my role, but misjudged the consequences. I apologize." That admission rang out in the room like a belated sigh. William looked at her without speaking, but his eyes were full of resolve. He did not show open anger, but everyone sensed he would never easily forget or forgive this action. As a father, he felt some relief that the truth had been revealed, but the pain and vigilance remained. Charles delivered the final decision. "Camilla will not participate in the upcoming important state banquets. We must tighten procedures for preparing all state-level events. No more errors or similar challenges will..." His voice low, but full of royal authority. "Camilla, this was a gravely inappropriate action regarding royal protocol, especially since it involved Charlotte's position, the representative of the family's future. I am deeply disappointed." Camilla lowered her head, her hands clutching the hem of her dress tightly. After a moment of silence, she looked up, her voice trembling. "I acted on impulse."
He sensed the anomaly emerging clearly. A female staff member who had directly assisted with placing the name cards continued in a soft but firm voice. She even asked me a rather strange question. She inquired who would be sitting in the central area next to the senior members of the royal family. At the time, I thought it was just ordinary interest, so I replied that it was the position for Princess Charlotte, according to the approved chart. She nodded but said nothing more, and continued standing there while a staff member around 30 years old spoke with a slightly trembling voice. "Your Highness, about 15 minutes before the main guests entered, Queen Camilla was already in the banquet area." She stood observing for quite some time, walking slowly along the rows of chairs. It did not seem like she was casually looking for a seat. She paused for a long while at the central position. William frowned, his gaze sharpening. Slowly, trying to keep her voice normal. "I was just trying the seat for a moment. It meant nothing." Charles looked at her, his voice low but full of weight. "This is Charlotte's seat. We approved the chart long ago." William said nothing, but his gaze spoke volumes. He stood up when William also arrived. The prince strode in quickly, his face flushed with suppressed anger, his eyes sharp as daggers as he stared directly at her. The atmosphere in the great hall suddenly thickened. Camilla felt the heavy pressure bearing down on her shoulders. She rose, believed she deserved a clearer, more secure place. She had not expected things to unfold so quickly. But just a few minutes later, hurried footsteps sounded. Protocol staff appeared with pale faces, followed by King Charles. Charles entered with a grave expression, his eyes showing clear surprise and displeasure. Camilla was momentarily startled, but quickly regained her composure. She had not yet seen him. He closed his eyes. The image of Camilla sitting in Charlotte's chair returned, filling him with anxiety mixed with fury. As a father, he could not sit idly by. He decided to personally lead the investigation as discreetly as possible, avoiding any public scandal. The very next morning, William summoned the head of protocol and the logistics team to his private office. He demanded a review of all reports on the banquet preparations, especially the timeline for placing the name cards. "I want to know exactly how everything happened," he said, his voice low but full of determination. The protocol had a middle-aged man. Days following the state banquet, Windsor Castle seemed to return to its normal rhythm, but for William, everything was completely different. He could not forget that moment. Every time a man with rich experience presented clearly. "Your Highness, the seating chart had no last-minute changes whatsoever. Everything was approved in advance and checked 3 times. William nodded, then requested to review power. That would send a strong message. Her role in the royal family was becoming increasingly important and could not be overlooked. Afterward, she could simply stand up and change seats before the main guests sat down. No one could prove it was intentional." With that thought, Camilla pulled out the chair and sat down. She sat upright, lightly smoothing her dress, a fleeting sense of satisfaction washing over her. In that moment, she felt she was asserting her position. The royal family had gone through many upheavals, and she believed to test how far her limits went. If she sat there, would the staff dare to speak up? If no one reacted immediately, the photos prepared for the ceremony, which were always taken before the official start, would capture her in the central position of an extremely prominent position, right in the center of the honor area, beside the seats of the highest-ranking members of the royal family. It was a position that clearly displayed the right of succession, a symbol that the whole world was watching. A sudden thought flashed through her mind. She wanted to test it.
I've always felt very strongly about it, and I've been watching very carefully what others have been doing.
The moment Camilla sat down in the seat of honor, the entire state banquet hall seemed to fall into a heavy atmosphere. It was not an ordinary chair, but a position the royal family had meticulously prepared days in.
Ordered Camilla to change seats. While many believed it was merely a small mix-up before the dinner began, Prince William noticed details he simply could not overlook. Why had Camilla stood observing the seating chart for so long?
In advance to mark an important milestone for the only daughter of Prince William, Princess Charlotte, in royal ceremonies.
The entire room descended into chaos as King Charles himself stepped forward and for deliberately sitting in Charlotte's exact position.
Was it truly just an unfortunate accident, or was there behind those brief minutes a calculated scheme to test the boundaries of power within the royal family? The atmosphere at Windsor Castle on that late June evening carried a special weight.
Chris strode quickly toward the banquet area. His steps were steady but radiated irritation. At the same time, William received the notification via the internal phone system.
Taut as a bowstring, other staff members stood motionless, barely daring to breathe. Charles stopped in front of Camilla, his voice low but carrying the full weight of a king. "Camilla, this is Charlotte's seat. The child will sit here."
Camilla looked up, a brief hesitation flickering in her eyes for a long second. She forced a strained smile as if weighing something. That moment of silence made the air even more stifling. William stood not far away, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. His heart pounded with concern for the prince, who was in a nearby hallway, immediately turned on his heel, his face darkening with deep worry and anger. He walked briskly, nearly running the final steps to arrive in time.
The atmosphere around the banquet table was now composed, but a calculating glint flashed in her eyes.
The young staff member standing closest felt his heart pound. A cold sweat ran down his back. This was not. King Charles was in the preparation area, having just finished putting on his formal vest for the ceremony. Upon hearing the report, his brow furrowed his expression, shifting from surprise to clear displeasure. He paused, took a deep breath, and
echoed through the space. The protocol staff, dressed in immaculate uniforms, were conducting final checks